Okay, welcome MegaWhale team to another video. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. We're going to be taking a look at two different charts. We're going to be taking a look at Bitcoin and we're going to be taking a look at Amazon in the 1990 to 2000. This is in fact a dot-com bubble, burst, and Amazon stock dropped a huge amount. And we're seeing a very similar pattern play out on Bitcoin. Before we get into the video, just a quick disclaimer, these are not my opinions. I don't think this is going to happen. So I don't want to hear any of the trolls in the comments telling me, like you're wrong, blah, 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 blah. This is not my opinions, guys. So this is just me looking at two similar patterns and applying to the Bitcoin chart. I definitely don't think this is going to happen. I think this is a good educational post. And it's always good to look at possibilities. And at the end of the day, we all look at cup and handle patterns. We all look at head and shoulder patterns. We all look at descending wedges and broadening channels and all these different types of patterns, and we believe in these patterns to work because over time and historical data has proven that they have a higher probability of playing out according to other patterns, or they have a higher success rate or whatever. So looking at this pattern and then looking at the pattern we have seen on the Amazon stock and then applying it to this pattern, which we currently see on Bitcoin, is no different to that. It's a pattern that we've identified. It's a pattern that has played out before. Sure, we don't have a lot of historical data on this pattern playing out, but at the end of the day, it is a rising wedge. This is a macro rising wedge as well. So there's two patterns that we do have historical data on. So we can assume that something similar to the nature of what happened to Amazon can potentially happen to Bitcoin. And that's kind of the scope we're going to with today's video. Before we get into it, remember, like, comment, and subscribe. Link in the description to our Twitter and Telegram. Enter our $1,000 giveaway. All you got to do is subscribe to this channel. Once we reach 1,000 followers, a random winner will be selected. Let's get into the video. So today's video, we're just covering Amazon and Bitcoin stock. Most important thing we want to cover is a Gaussian channel. Let's bring up the Gaussian channel. We can see a very, very similar thing happening with the Gaussian channel and the price action. We can see, let's map it out. We had a retest. We had that breakout of that Gaussian to the bottom, which we can see here. And on Bitcoin, we had that push upwards and retest a trend line, push upwards, retest a trend line, which sent us in our first leg up. That was our parabolic move, which that same thing happened here. A retest of that trend line sent us in that first leg up for our parabolic move. All right, we had that retracement back into that Gaussian channel, that retracement back into the Gaussian channel, followed by a second leg up. And that was our local high for an extended period of time, right? That reached on April. And obviously that reached on April. So that's quite similar, right? Both reaching April, about 10 days apart, but they both reached in April. Anyway, after that, we saw a significant drop for both coins. So we saw a significant drop for Bitcoin and we saw a significant drop in the Amazon stock. Where did it come down to? Well, it actually came down to retest that same trend line it formed all the way back about 6 months prior on both charts. So retested that trend line underneath the Gaussian channel, breaking that 200-day moving average, breaking that 50 SMA and going all the way to the bottom, retesting, finding support, eventually pushing back through that Gaussian channel, pushing back through a 50 SMA and the 200 moving average, only to drop back down and retest the bottom of that Gaussian channel, which we saw happen here, and our Bitcoin, which sent us into our final move upwards, which reached our all-time high. We saw exactly the same thing happen on Amazon, and guess what? Exactly the same pattern, exactly the same way, hitting exactly the same targets. It is not a coincidence. After that, we saw a drop downwards, obviously a retest of that channel. We didn't see that one on Amazon, obviously dropping down and crashing, all right? So we had that crash once we dropped below that channel. That was our crash, that was our crash. And we're in this consolidation zone. So where are we now? We're right here, all right? If we had to look at the Amazon chart, this is where we'd be. Now, I am saying I do expect to move up to $48,000 pretty soon to retest this trend line before we continue downwards or move upwards. Obviously, if we move upwards, that would invalidate what we're talking about here. If we move downwards, this is very much still a possibility. So where do I think we'll be heading? We'll have to take a look at Bitcoin a lot larger time frame. So we're going to move to a 7-day chart. We'll move to a 1-day chart on both of these coins. Should I say on Bitcoin and this Amazon stock, we'll move to a 1-day. And we can see, let's figure out where we are, 2008. All right, we're gonna have to go back a little bit. So we can see every single time, not every time, but about 80 to 90% of the time we enter the Gaussian channel, historically in Bitcoin. We have done a video on this before, so I'm not gonna go over it again today, but about 80 to 90% of the time we enter that Gaussian channel on Bitcoin. Now, entering isn't just a candle wick in like here. It's a full candle close and a full candle open. That's what entering a channel means. Every time we enter a channel, a Gaussian channel, we end up going below the channel. I've said it many times. It was exactly how I actually predicted this crash here by using the Gaussian channel on the 1-day chart. Entering the Gaussian channel results in us going below the Gaussian channel. We're happening again, we're entering the Gaussian channel. We're going to go below the Gaussian channel. The 200-day moving average will catch up. I do believe we're going to bottom out about 25,000 to 30,000. That is if we don't get above $53,000. So remember guys, today's video is not about giving you price predictions. Today's video is about showing you how two similar patterns can be identified on two very different assets and can still share or tell us very relevant information. All right, patterns are very consistent over time. Obviously we have bullish and bearish patterns. If patterns weren't relevant, we wouldn't have any of these head and shoulders, cup and handles, wedges, pennants, none of these. They wouldn't exist because then, patterns wouldn't be relevant. This is a pattern, we've identified the pattern. It's a rising wedge. All right, we've had a retest and a break of that trend line. We're now in a downtrend. All right, we are now in a downtrend. You can accept it or you cannot accept it. The facts are the facts. We are in a downtrend until we break that resistance, push over this trigger of 48,000, get over 53,000. We're not looking good for a move upwards. Who cares what's happening on a short term? Who cares what happens in a day to day? Who cares what happens to the week to week? We're thinking, the big picture of a Bitcoin and what's going to happen in the next few weeks to months. That's where the money is made, not the next few 24 hours or the next 72 hours. Anyway, moving forward, we saw a very similar thing happen here on Amazon. We saw the price drop below and crash into that Gaussian channel, finally breaking through and bottoming out all the way underneath. Now, if this was relevant to Bitcoin and we extrapolated where the price would go, we would actually end up reaching around $9,000. I don't think we'll hit $9,000. I think my target is a little bit higher than that. But this is something to consider, guys. We're seeing the same pattern play out. I think it's got potential. All this is saying is Bitcoin's got a long way to go down. If this happens, Bitcoin has a long way to go down, and it's definitely not something we need to be worried about. Because we're onto it, we're looking at it already, we're way ahead of the curve, people aren't even looking at this stuff yet. So, we're looking at it, we're keeping this in mind. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, it doesn't matter. We've got our game plan, but I think it's important to notice where our historical buying is for Bitcoin. I think if we go to our daily chart, and we zoom out a little bit, there's no coincidence, there's a lot of buying volume down over here, $8,000 historically, and prices tend to retrace. I'm not saying we're going to go back to that price, but I'm saying there is definitely a possibility we will end up retracing all the way back down here, even at $12,000, if we actually crash completely and the market tanks. The US dollar rises, inflation, all that kind of stuff. They bring up interest rates, all this stuff that is bad for on-risk assets such as Bitcoin. We can definitely see the market take a tumble. We are in a downtrend, we are in a bear market. Until we get that reversal, we are continuing down, and we can only assume we're going to continue down until we hit the support lines. We've talked about these supports in our other video. We've talked about possible reversal points. So if you want information on that, I'm just going to say it here, go watch those other videos. Today's video is not the purpose or the place to find that information. Today's video is just to identify a possible pattern that could be playing out, to keep you guys up to date and keep the idea in your head. So if it does happen, you can't say, oh, I didn't know about it. You've been on top of it, weeks and weeks and months in advance of anyone else. And that's how we win. That's how you make smart decisions. That's how you gain leverage over a market. That's how you can choose when to act and not be forced into decision when the market needs you to decide. You get time to evaluate your decisions. You get time to plan your actions, and you can execute them how you want and when you want. You don't just get FOMO and get forced into a market because the market's moving in a direction that you didn't plan for. So looking at sometimes scenarios that you don't want to happen is sometimes the best way to prepare for scenarios, even when they don't happen or when they do happen, because you have all the ball, you got the ball in your court. You get to choose how to play the shot rather than being forced into a decision because you didn't look at the flip side of the coin. It's always good to evaluate both bullish and bearish scenarios. That's exactly what we do in this channel, guys. We give you the uncut truth of the charts. We tell you the data. We don't throw in our personal opinions or lies. We tell you how it is, and you guys can make up your own decisions. We obviously tell you where we think it might be going, and based on our data, we extrapolate. We give you an educated guess, most of the time we're actually correct because we have a very high track record of being correct for Bitcoin and most altcoins. But obviously it is your decision whether you want to follow it. But I think the key takeaway is, guys, if you want, like honest opinions, you got to be looking at people who are telling you both sides of the story. They're not betting on both horses. They do have their own personal opinion. Obviously, I have my favored. There's a more favorable direction and an unfavorable direction. I'm always going to be betting on the more favorable direction. I'm a trader, of course. I'm taking the one with the better odds. That is what trading is. But we have to be evaluating both bearish and bullish. So if it doesn't go our way, if the trade doesn't go our way, or the market turns in a way that we're not expecting, we are aware of why it happened, we're aware of where it's going to go, so we can then capitalize on that, rather than being in panic mode and then scrambling and then trying to figure out what's happening on the day or on the week or whatever after it's happened. We already know what's happening, and that's what you do. All right, so guys, thanks for tuning in. I hope this video was informational. I hope it was educational. I hope you learned something. I don't know what I just said before. Informational is not a word. Needless to say, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.